Welcome to Film and Page. I'm Dominic, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, The Marshal. So the best thing about Disney Star Wars is back. The Mandalorian, by far the best thing. And probably one of my favorite things about Star Wars in general. I'm really liking this show, and I really liked Season 1. This is just a grand slam, this show. I was iffy on it. I didn't know what I was going to think of it. But now that I've seen the first season, we're getting into Season 2 here. I'm really enjoying the show. So this season picks up pretty much where the last one left off. All the Mandalorians have been wiped out, so he's on a quest to try to find the last Mandalorian to help him return Baby Yoda to his people, because Baby Yoda is still a mystery. So I'll give kind of like a quick rundown of the plot, and then I'm going to go into more spoilers. So in this episode, he's trying to find another Mandalorian. So he goes to get information from this criminal guy, and then he proceeds to tell him, well, there's a Mandalorian on Tatooine. That's the last one I know of. That's the only one I know of anyway. So he proceeds to go to Tatooine. He hooks up again with the woman that he hooked up with earlier when he was on Tatooine, the one that looked after Baby Yoda for him while he went on his mission there. And he's told that there's a Mandalorian in this old mining town, but she tells him the town doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't even appear on any maps. But he decides he's going to take a look anyway. So he goes out to this mining town, and it does indeed exist, but it is very small. And it is, for all intents and purposes, a little western town. Like, that's what I really like about this series. It has this western feel to it, and this one definitely does. It has that total western feel to it. This is like a western in space. So the Mandalorian shows up, and he goes to the bar and he asks, I'm looking for another Mandalorian. Do you have anyone that looks like me, wearing armor like me? So he tells him, well, yeah, the Marshal. So anyway, then the Marshal shows up, and he's decked out in Mandalorian gear. And so then Mando doesn't know, is this guy an actual Mandalorian? So he comes in and he sits down, and then right away Mando knows he's not, because this guy pulls his helmet off, and the Mandalorians don't remove their helmets, even though they did in the Clone Wars, but whatever. So anyway, then he demands the armor from the guy, because he knows, well, you're not a Mandalorian. I want that Mandalorian armor. So the other guy says, well, now we're going to have a problem. So then they get up, and it's just like they're going to have a draw in an old Western bar. It has that same, they're getting ready to pull their guns on each other, to have a quick draw there. And then they're interrupted because the town gets attacked by a crate dragon. And so anyway, then the thing eats Bantha while it's there. And then, so anyway, the Marshal makes a deal with the Mando. He says, you know what? If you can help me kill this dragon that's been terrorizing our town, I will give you this Mandalorian armor. So Mando decides, okay, he's going to take the deal. He's going to help him. And so they have to team up and defeat this dragon. So that's the plot of this episode. And it is a really good episode, and I am really enjoying this show. And I just love this whole Western feel to it. And also, I just love the whole, the whole bounty hunter angle in Star Wars is something I've always loved. I've always loved that angle. So now I'm going to get into more heavy spoilers, because there's a surprise in this episode and it's a big one if you don't know anything about this season going in. So when the Marshal shows up and he walks in, now I spotted this right away, and I knew they were going to do this at some point, but I didn't know when. I didn't think they were going to do it this early. But when he walks in, the Mandalorian armor he is wearing is the armor that belongs to Boba Fett. So he's wearing Boba Fett's old armor. And so anyway, then he proceeds to tell Mando how he came across this armor. He said that after the Empire fell, there was like this mining corporation, or like a mining guild, that basically took the town over. And then, so anyway, he barely escaped, but he was able to lift some valuable crystals from these guys, and then took off out into the desert. But he had no water, had nothing, just a bucket of valuable crystals. So he wandered out around there for a while until he collapsed, but he was finally saved, luckily enough, by some Jawas and their sandcrawler. So they take this guy aboard, and they're trying to sell him all these different droids and equipment and all that. He doesn't want any of it, but he spots Mandalorian armor that the Jawas have. And the armor, it's Boba Fett's armor. And it looks all beat up and the paint's almost completely gone off it. So he says, hey, I'll buy that. That's what I want to buy. So he buys the armor and the rockets and everything. And then he goes back to that town and uses the armor to defeat these guys. And then gets the town back and becomes the town marshal. But now they're getting terrorized by this great dragon. So Boba Fett's armor shows up. And if anyone knows, so there's a mystery here. How did the Jawas get Boba Fett's armor? Wasn't Boba Fett, killed in the Sarlacc pit? Because remember, in Return of the Jedi, when we seen they were battling on Jabba's sail barges there, that Han Solo spun around with that rod and hit his backpack and fired off his backpack, and he launched him and he smashed into the sail barge across from him, and then he just tumbled down and got eaten up by the Sarlacc. So it's always been somewhat of a mystery. How did he ever get out of this? Now, it was explained that in the old EU that Disney has recently, well, when they bought Lucasfilm, they ditched the old EU. But in the old EU, this was explained, and it was they had Boba Fett live. So this was the first full Star Wars novel I ever read. Is this one right here, The Bounty Hunter Wars. And I got this through the Science Fiction Book Club way back in like 1999. No, not even that. Around 99. So at that point, you had the 3 original trilogy movies, and The Phantom Menace had just come out. So there was no Jango Fett yet. There wasn't no one really knew anything about what Mandalorians were back then and stuff like that. And besides their appearances in comic books and stuff, and Boba Fett himself was always a complete mystery. Like, was he an actual Mandalorian? And there was rumors that he was actually once a stormtrooper and all this kind of stuff. So he was always, and that's what made the character so cool, was he had this mystery about him, and he looked cool. Like, when I was a kid, I just loved the way Boba Fett looked. I loved that. I thought that armor was cool, and his ship, the Slave One, is like one of my favorite Star Wars ships. So I got this one, and this is actually an omnibus. So it's actually it's a trilogy of books in one book, The Bounty Hunter Wars. And I remember I got really sick around 99, and so I was home from work for like 2 solid weeks. So I just read this book from cover to cover. So in this book, it explains that yes, he went down in the Sarlacc pit, and he was getting all burned up by the digestive juices, but he was able to blast his way out through this creature, and he escaped. And so anyway, he was picked up by another former bounty hunter, and they kind of nursed him back to health. But he was all like kind of weird and scarred up and stuff from being in the Sarlacc pit. And then he had an adventure right after that, and it picked up. But he never ever lost his armor or anything like that. He just continued on being Boba Fett, and he still had his armor. So that was, if you ever get the chance to read this trilogy of books, The Bounty Hunter Wars, it is really, really, really good. And it kind of ties into Shadows of the Empire, because that character, Prince Xizor, is in the story as well. So that was the old EU explanation, and that's how Boba Fett lived back in the day. So now, so that's why I find this really interesting, because I kind of know how they did it in the EU, but I'm kind of curious to how they're going to do it now in The Mandalorian. So now I'm going to talk more heavy spoilers here. So they have to team up with the Sand People to defeat this Krayt Dragon, because they know how to beat it. And but the Sand People, they're after raiding this little mining town. So there's no trust at all between the mining people and the Sand People. So then the Mandalorian, he has to like broker, kind of be the go-between and convince them, like, if you guys don't work together, we're not going to defeat this thing. So then they have a huge battle with this Krayt Dragon, and they end up beating it and stuff like that. So Mando gets the armor. But now the twist at the end, well, you saw the armor, so you knew he was going to show up. At the very end of the episode, you actually see Boba Fett, but he's in like kind of like weird desert gear, and he doesn't have his helmet, he's bald, and he looks all kind of like scarred up. Kind of the way I pictured him when I read The Bounty Hunter Wars after he got out of that Sarlacc pit years ago. So now there's that mystery of, he did survive that Sarlacc pit. He didn't die. He got out somehow. And for some reason, he either gave up his armor or lost his armor. And obviously he was around near that town, so he knew his armor was there, or he was looking for his armor. So there's a lot of questions. So I'm really curious as to what is going to be the explanation for this one, as it's a really interesting storyline. And what has he been up to all this time? And does he still have his ship, the Slave One? That's another interesting thing I want to find out. And of course, they brought back the actor from the prequel series, the one who portrayed Jango Fett back in the prequel series. And as far as I know, Boba Fett's armor is really just Jango's Fett armor painted over, from my understanding. And so then there's the question. I remember George Lucas said that Jango Fett and Boba Fett weren't really Mandalorians. I don't know if they're going to make it, so I'll be curious to see what they do with this. But I kind of like the idea that they actually are Mandalorians and not just guys who ripped off Mandalorian armor. But Jango Fett didn't behave like a Mandalorian, not like the Mandalorians in this series, because he removed his helmet all the time, and so you've seen his face. But there's kind of like this weird continuity error there, because the Clone Wars, the Mandalorians removed their helmets all the time. And you saw their faces, but now in the new series, no Mandalorian removes their helmet. So it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen when these two guys meet face to face. And that's the one criticism I had against this show when it first started. I just thought, well, if you're going to do this, why not just do a Boba Fett series? Because this guy just seems like a generic copy of Boba Fett. But now that I've seen the first season and stuff, he kind of grew into his own character, and he's a very different character from Boba Fett. Boba Fett was a lot more underhanded and stuff like that, where this guy seems to have more of a moral compass and more of a code of honor. So, a really good episode, and now that they're bringing in Boba Fett, who's one of my favorite Star Wars characters, I really want to see where they go with what they do with this, where they take this storyline. I'm really curious. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I will see you at the next one. I'd like to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you all in helping this channel grow. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded.